Well, just want to take a few minutes to wrap up this morning and help us to think about what Christmas is all about in one sense. Now, one very quick question for everybody here. What are the times that you feel closest to God and His presence? For some of us, it might be getting out in amongst nature and just being there in amongst God's creation. And you kind of stand there and you look around and you take in the view, you take in what God has created. And you kind of think at that moment, oh, this is His handiwork. Maybe for you, it's walking into a specific place, a church building, a location where you come in and you might be able to just sit quietly. And you recognize at that moment, actually, I'm here in the presence of God. There's nothing that distracts me. For you, it might be putting on a piece of music. It might be turning up something loud that you sing along to. It might be in the car driving as you go. It might be a corporate worship thing that happens where in that moment you're almost wrapped up with the presence of God in that music, in the words, in the sounds that are involved. There are so many ways that we can be involved with God's presence. I know Greg this week, he actually put something on Facebook about spending time in the car listening to a piece of music and having to sit there till the end of it, till there was that real revelation of God's presence. And that's a very real thing. We all experience that. But what does it feel like when you recognize the presence of God with you at that time? Now, as we think about this Christmas story, just wrapping it up today with this idea, the essence of the Christmas story, if we're going to say this is what the Christmas story is all about, it's just this very simple phrase of God with us. That's what it is. There's nothing else. Yes, we think about the baby. We might even think about presents and all of that stuff. But the essence of the Christmas story is nothing more and nothing less than God with us. So we just want to take that one little phrase and think about that today, just as we conclude. Now, as we read earlier, Matthew chapter 1, just those few verses there, where we look at the story of Joseph and what that meant for him. It actually begins with this verse that says, "This is how the birth of Jesus the Messiah came about." This is it. This is what happened. For Joseph, we want to think about him on these few moments just now. What did it mean for Joseph? Now, obviously for Joseph, he was engaged. He had these plans to get married. Well, they weren't really his plans. When we think about marriage, we think about maybe two people coming together and all of these plans that need to happen. How are we going to do this? What's the date we're going to get married? What's our ceremony going to look like? What kind of ring do I want? What's my dress going to look like? All of these things. The couple kind of work through all of that themselves. They involve people from the family about how are we going to do this, but this is a celebration of us. But for Joseph and for Mary, this was very different for them. Jewish culture meant they pretty much had no say in this. I don't know if anybody here has ever been involved in a wedding where it's been organised for you, where somebody says, actually, we've decided you will marry this person. That's what Jewish culture was. For Mary and Joseph, their families made this decision, made this arrangement. There's a very good chance that Mary and Joseph pretty much didn't know each other very well. Their families did. Their families had this agreement with each other. It was an agreement that was financial as well. There was money that changed hands and all of these things. And the result was going to be the wedding of these two young people, Mary and Joseph. But as we go along in this story, as we read it, as we discover what happened with Joseph, these plans that weren't his all of a sudden get kind of turned on their head when he discovers that his wife-to-be is going to have a baby. And he goes, I got nothing to do with it. It's not mine, all right? So there's this big decision that needs to be made. There is this moment where for Joseph, for him, he has to make a decision. Because the results of this decision will impact the families. There is a great deal of shame that would come upon Mary, upon the families, upon everybody else who is involved in this if this goes through, if this goes ahead. And Joseph says, actually, the easiest thing for me to do is just to say, let's can this, all right? Let's pull a pin on this. It's not going to be good for anybody, so we need to stop this where it is. I'm just going to do it quietly. Mary, you'll be all right, okay? I'll look after you. You'll be fine. Families, we're just going to do this quietly. Nobody's going to get embarrassed. Nobody's going to be shamed. Nothing like that. We'll just do it quietly. So Joseph has this plan in his head until one night he has a dream. Now, I don't know what dreams are like for you. What are your dreams like? Who else has weird, crazy, strange dreams that if they were in reality, we've got some fingers pointing over here, if they were in reality, you're going, what is going on here? This is crazy. This isn't real. None of this actually happens in real life. Some of my dreams are the most bizarre things you've ever experienced. Or probably you haven't experienced, which is why they're dreams. And I don't know whether back in the olden days, whether dreams were different back then. Rodney, were dreams different back in the olden days, or no? Oh, just thought I'd check. So, but for Joseph, he went to bed one night, and he has this dream, which is the appearance of an angel. And as we read through this, we see that the angel says to Joseph, actually, things are going to be okay. Things are going to be all right. The angel says, Joseph, that's you, son of David. Don't be afraid to take Mary as your wife. For the child within her was conceived by the Holy Spirit, and she will have a son. And you are to name him Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. Now, Joseph wakes up. He wakes up, and there would have been this moment of, well, what do I do? What do I do? I've had this dream, which is very, very specific. It's very pointed. But my problem is, I'm in this predicament. Society, Jewish culture, everybody, even my family will be saying, this is what you've got to do. You've got to pull a pin on this. This can't go forward. We cannot keep on doing this. And there would have been very strong pressure for Joseph to say, all right, that's what I've got to do. For the sake of everybody, I've got to do that. And as we think about these words that Joseph heard in this dream from the angel, there is this very specific message from God that says, actually, it's going to be okay. And I want you to go ahead and do what I've called you to do. I don't know whether you've ever been in this situation of, what do I do? I know what everybody else is saying that I should do. And everybody else, the loud voices are very strong. But I feel like God is actually guiding me, calling me, telling me in this direction. But I need to do something very specific that's very different to what everybody else thinks that I should do with my life. Over the period of COVID, one of the common things that happened for people to gather was via Zoom. I don't know how many Zoom calls you've had in the last 2 years. Some of us have been very regular on Zoom, and there's often these moments where if you all get on there and not everybody has muted their microphone, you get all these weird sounds that come through. You get all these things, these sounds, these voices, all of this stuff that's happening at the same time. And you have to say to everybody, can everybody just please mute your computer, mute your microphone? We don't need to hear everything. We just need one voice that's speaking. Then comes the difficulty when somebody then needs to speak and they've forgotten to unmute their microphone. And everybody else is going, we can't hear you, we can't hear you. But there is this very real thing of sometimes there are just too many voices. But today, for Joseph, there was this very clear sense for him, I need to listen to one voice that is very strong, one voice that is very clear, one voice that gives me my direction for the future. And it may be very different to what everybody else is saying, but I need to stand on my conviction that the voice of God, what God is saying to me, the way that God is leading me, is where I should go. And we know that for Joseph, as he said yes, this was the story of new beginnings. It was a new beginning for him. It was a new beginning for Mary. It was a new beginning for everybody. Actually, it was a new beginning for you. It was a new beginning for you and me. It was a new beginning for all of us. The fact that Joseph said, yes, I will listen to the voice of God. I will follow where he is calling me, regardless of what everybody else is saying, meant that there was a new beginning for us. I wonder today, what is God saying to you? Where is this moment where you meet with God and you sense God's presence and you need to make some kind of a response? And what do you listen to? Which voice do you listen to? Life can be tough. There can be hard things that happen. This was a situation that would have been difficult to make the right choice. But very often out of the toughest and most difficult situations can come a new beginning, can come a new start, a new way of life. And I doubt whether anybody would go through a new beginning and say, actually, I'm not sure that this is right. Sorry, I've messed that up. But I wonder whether today you do need to say to God, just show me what it is that you want for me, for my life, for my direction. Saying yes to God, this new beginning, is the greatest thing that we can ever do. This is something that the prophet, and we read this, Sharon alluded to this right at the very beginning of our meeting today, hundreds of years before this actually happened, as the angel quoted this stuff. This goes back to Isaiah. And Isaiah said to Ahaz, this king many, many years ago, this very direct wording. He said, all of these things occurred to fulfill the Lord's message through the prophet. Look, the virgin will conceive a child. She will give birth to a son. They will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. Christmas is about God with us. Nothing more, nothing less. And today I want to encourage you in your walk with God and your discovery of who He is, to recognize that this Christmas time is all about God making Himself available to you for a new story, a new beginning. And that's what God wants for you to experience today.